about stories today. So for me, it started very early in life, I think. I'm the oldest child in my family, and my mother didn't have a lot of experience with small children. So when I started to talk, I don't know, just before the age of 2, I started spinning stories, yarns about princesses in faraway places that weren't really based in fact at all. And my mother got quite concerned about this. She ended up going to an aunt and said to the aunt, "I'm really worried about little Mary. I think she's going to grow up to be a pathological liar. She just keeps telling me nonsense." And of course the aunt said, no, Mary's all right, just her little brain's starting to work, so don't worry about that, dear. So that was probably the beginning. Another part of me that you might want to know, I'm nosy. People say to me, "Oh, you're just curious." Well, that's true. I am curious, but I'm plain nosy as well. I just like to know what happened, who did it, why did they do it, all the behind the scenes things. These things fascinate me. And as a child, I was particularly interested in the things that I was perhaps not supposed to be hearing about. I wanted to know all about it. It's probably in my DNA as well. I was born on the west coast of Scotland. My people come from the county of Argyll, and that's within sight of Ireland in some places. Argyll is translated from the Gaelic term Éire Gael, which means essentially the land of the Gael. So that's the Gaelic-speaking people of Western Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and they all had a very strong oral history tradition. That's how they kept their history. Everybody knew their ancestors for generations back. But the particular community members who were very interested in that kind of thing and dedicated their lives to keeping the stories and the local history were the SCHA. And that's another Gaelic word, or 2 words. It translates to the old stories. So the SCHA, you could go to them and say, "Hey, where did my great-grandfather have a house?" Anything at all, and they would basically know that. So my father passed away just over a year ago. He was 90, and he had spent his entire life gathering the stories of his ancestors and poking around in his family tree and collecting stories and records. I suppose he'd be a SCHA of modern times. He told stories constantly to anyone who would listen, really. So as a young person, I didn't pay much attention to that, as young people tend to do. Later, as I had a family of my own, I decided I was going to dabble in this family tree thing, just dabble. And at that time, the internet was becoming the place to learn everything. So I started doing some online genealogy, and it was quite a bit of fun. And my dad was meanwhile working on his own genealogy, doing it the old school way in the family history centers that the LDS Church offers. So he would bring notepads and he'd order microfilm and he'd scribble notes. And then after some time, his method and mine merged. He would ask me once in a while to look up something on this internet, and I'd ask him to tell me some more stories. So we started working together, and that was a very good experience. We did that together until the end of his life. He continued to gather stories, and so did I. In addition to that, I belong to the Barrie Historical Archive, which is a wonderful group to belong to. We gather all kinds of history. And through that, I got the great opportunity to write a column of local history for Barrie Today. It's called Remember This. And all of these things came together to lead me to decide to open my own small business, and I call it Fire and Mist Stories. And I help people learn about their own stories. Sometimes we do custom walking tours through old neighborhoods. I do a little public speaking. And most of all, I just want to encourage you to look behind your names, dates, and places and find the fabulous stories in your own history.